On February 14th, sweethearts of all ages will exchange cards, flowers, candy, and more lavish gifts in the name of St. Valentine. But as a historian of Christianity, I can tell you that at the root of our modern holiday is a beautiful fiction. St. Valentine was no lover or patron of love. Valentine's Day, in fact, originated as a liturgical feast to celebrate the decapitation of a 3rd century Christian martyr, or perhaps two. So how did we get from beheading to betrothing on Valentine's Day? Ancient sources reveal that there were several Saint Valentines who died on February 14th. Two of them were executed during the reign of Roman Emperor Claudius Gothicus in 269-270 AD, at a time when persecution of Christians was common. How do we know this? Because an order of Belgian monks spent 3 centuries collecting evidence for the lives of saints from manuscript archives around the known world. They were called Bollandists, after Jean Bolland, a Jesuit scholar who began publishing the massive 68-folio volumes of Acta Sanctorum, or Lives of the Saints, beginning in 1643. Since then, successive generations of monks continued the work until the last volume was published in 1940. The brothers dug up every scrap of information about every saint on the liturgical calendar and printed the texts arranged according to the saint's feast day. The volume encompassing February 14th contains the stories of a handful of Valentini, including the earliest 3 of whom died in the 3rd century. The earliest Valentinus is said to have died in Africa, along with 24 soldiers. Unfortunately, even the Bollandists could not find any more information about him. As the monks knew, sometimes all that the saints left behind was a name and day of death. We know only a little more about the other 2 Valentines. According to a late medieval legend reprinted in the Acta, which was accompanied by Bollandist critique about its historical value, a Roman priest named Valentinus was arrested during the reign of Emperor Gothicus and put into the custody of an aristocrat named Asterius. As the story goes, Asterius made the mistake of letting the preacher talk. Father Valentinus went on and on about Christ leading pagans out of the shadow of darkness and into the light of truth and salvation. Asterius made a bargain with Valentinus. If the Christian could cure Asterius's foster daughter of blindness, he would convert. Valentinus put his hands over the girl's eyes and chanted, "Lord Jesus Christ, enlighten your handmaid because you are God, the true light." The 3rd century Valentinus was a bishop of Terni in the province of Umbria, Italy. According to his equally dodgy legend, Terni's bishop got into a situation like the other Valentinus by debating a potential convert and afterward healing his son. The rest of story is quite similar as well. He too was beheaded on the orders of Emperor Gothicus and his body buried along the Via Flaminia. It is likely, as the Bollandists suggested, that there weren't actually 2 decapitated Valentines, but that 2 different versions of one saint's legend appeared in both Rome and Terni. Nonetheless, African, Roman, or Umbrian, none of the Valentines seems to have been a romantic. Indeed, medieval legends, repeated in modern media, had St. Valentine performing Christian marriage rituals or passing notes between Christian lovers jailed by Gothicus. Still other stories romantically involved him with the blind girl whom he allegedly healed. Yet none of these medieval tales had any basis in 3rd century history, as the Bollandists pointed out. In any case, historical veracity did not count for much with medieval Christians. What they cared about were stories of miracles and martyrdoms, and the physical remains or relics of the saint. To be sure, many different churches and monasteries around medieval Europe claimed to have bits of a St. Valentinus's skull in their treasuries. Santa Maria in Cosmedin in Rome, for example, still displays a whole skull. According to the Bollandists, other churches across Europe also claim to own slivers and bits of one or the other St. Valentinus's body. For example, San Anton Church in Madrid, Whitefriars Street Church in Dublin, the Church of Saints Peter and Paul in Prague, St. Mary's Assumption in Chelmno, Poland, as well as churches in Malta, Birmingham, Glasgow, and on the Greek isle of Lesbos, among others. For believers, relics of the martyrs signified the saints continuing their invisible presence among communities of pious Christians. In 11th century Brittany, for instance, one bishop used what was purported to be Valentine's head to halt fires, prevent epidemics, and cure all sorts of illnesses, including demonic possession. As far as we know, though, the saint's bones did nothing special for lovers. Many scholars have deconstructed Valentine and his day in books, articles, and blog postings. Some suggest that the modern holiday is a Christian cover-up of the more ancient Roman celebration of Lupercalia in mid-February. Lupercalia originated as a ritual in a rural masculine cult involving the sacrifice of goats and dogs, and evolved later into an urban carnival. During the festivities, half-naked young men ran through the streets of Rome, streaking people with thongs cut from the skins of newly killed goats. Pregnant women thought it brought them healthy babies. In 496 AD, however, Pope Gelasius supposedly denounced the rowdy festival. Still, there is no evidence that the Pope purposely replaced Lupercalia with the more sedate cult of the martyred Saint Valentine or any other Christian celebration. Today, shops everywhere in England and the U.S. decorate their windows with hearts and banners proclaiming the annual Day of Love. Merchants stock their shelves with candy, jewelry, and Cupid-related trinkets begging, "Be my Valentine." For most lovers, this request does not require beheading. It seems that the erstwhile saint behind the holiday of love remains as elusive as love itself. Still, as St. Augustine, the great 5th-century theologian and philosopher, argued in his treatise on faith in invisible things, someone does not have to be standing before our eyes for us to love them. And much like love itself, St. Valentine and his reputation as the patron saint of love are not matters of verifiable history, but of faith.